Hey, man, thanks for jumping in. I know you got some place to go. Hey, will you listen to what I was saying? Is that Seth? It's not that I don't think Jalen is continuing to improve as a passer because he is. You see his accuracy. You see his decision. What I love about him so much is his decision making on the field. He sees the game like Brady, and he's more of a hybrid guy in a way. He's a one of Seth. I mean, he's not going to be Joe Burrow, but he's going to get the chains moving because he can move it in multiple ways. Is that how you see Hurts?
I think that he's still growing. And I think that a lot of, I saw this same list this morning on social media that he was ranked the sixth best quarterback in the National Football League. And I just kind of chuckled at it because, there's two things at work here. If you look at the other quarterbacks on that list, they're all first rounders. That's the first thing. The NFL loves its first round quarterbacks, and the NFL loves for its first round quarterbacks to be, the face of the National Football League. The second thing is he's bucking all the trends. How in the hell was Jalen Hurts supposed to? How was he to take the Philadelphia Eagles to the Super Bowl in his third year in the NFL, his second year as a full-time starter? That wasn't supposed to happen. So when I look at all of these things, and he's not the traditional guy to your point, most of these other guys, with the exception, like you said, of Lamar Jackson, and maybe even Josh Allen, because he runs a lot more, a lot more than, people would want to admit. But, when I look at Josh Allen, he's like a Brett Favre to me, a bigger Brett Favre, who doesn't throw as many interceptions. But he takes chances because he's got a big arm. But the rest of these guys are pretty much pocket passers unless they're forced to get out of the pocket, with the exception of Lamar. And I think in a lot of ways that the NFL does not want to see, that be, the prototypical quarterback. But guess what? With these multiple offenses, run pass option, read option, all of this stuff, this is the quarterback of the future. Not the prototypical 6'4", 6'5" guy that can stand in the pocket, and go through a progression and, manipulate the pocket. Yeah, these guys have to have some of that. But I think for the most part, their ability to be able to run and stress defenses out, that's going to be the direction that you see most offenses go in the National Football League now.
Wow, Seth, I never thought about the promoting of the league. That the league is still in a stigma of the running quarterback being promoted versus the big arm guy who gets the points and gets the theatrical points. You see, when you're Jalen, you're going to go on a 17-play drive or a 12-play drive. That at times can be mundane. You want to watch somebody like Allen or Burrow, these guys, or Mahomes, they just chuck it down the field, 3 plays, they're in the end zone, there's 7. They go back to a commercial timeout. It's about really the image of the league and what they're promoting. But I agree. I think these guys are here to stay. You're seeing more of them come into the league. So you think the league is going through a transformation right now and what they're seeing with these dual threat guys coming into the sport?
There's no doubt about it. The day and age of the Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, type quarterback that can't run, who just Phillip Rivers, who just stands in the pocket, that day is done, because defenses are too complex, pass rushes, are too dominant, for you to have a guy who cannot manipulate the pocket or a guy who can't get your first down, with his legs when everything, breaks down. And to your point, you talk about the image of the league and how quarterbacks in the league are looked upon. All you got to do is go back a year and, revisit the verbiage that surrounded when Jalen Hurts. Oh, he's inaccurate. Oh, his arm strength. Oh, his ability to read defenses. Oh, can he get through his progressions? We still don't know that. All of these questions befell him this year, last year, this time, as he was preparing for, the 2022 season, and what did he do? The kid just went to work. The kid went to work and proved to everybody, that he could be, in a lot of ways, what a lot of people thought he could not be. And this is where I'll always say, because I would love for the naysayers to step up and just say, hey, I got it wrong on Jalen Hurts. I got it 100% wrong, because everything that I thought he couldn't be, he could be. And the reason why I bring that up is because, when last season was over, even throughout, last season, not his first year under Nick Sirianni, I said, listen, I've learned some lessons over the years. The first one was judging a head coach before, seeing the end result, like Doug Peterson. I never thought that Doug Peterson would be a great head coach. But when Mike Lombardi said what he said about Doug Peterson, the way that the players went to his defense, that told me that they saw something from the inside that I couldn't see looking from the outside. Okay. So when we hired Nick Sirianni, I said the same thing. Whoa, don't particularly like, the press conference and, the way he handles himself, but let's see how this thing pans out. Same exact thing with Jalen Hurts. I'm like, you don't know what's in here and you don't know what resides right here before you start talking about what another man can be or what he can transform himself into. Because if his mindset is right and he's set on being the best that he can be, and he has some talent and some ability, some potential, and even much more if he has the God-given gift of hard work, because not everybody has that ability. Talent sometimes can be a curse as well as it can be, a gift. So I don't doubt anybody until I can see over a period of time, how they can transform themselves and how they can, remake themselves. Jalen did it, going from Alabama to Oklahoma. And now we watched him transform himself from the collegiate game to the pro game. And in my opinion, he deserves to be a hell of a lot higher than, 6 on that list. Tell me how many of those guys have taken their team to a Super Bowl.
Oh, no, there's only 4 guys that are on this top 10, and actually he's ranked 7th. And the guys that are ahead of him, Mahomes, Burrow, Rodgers, are the only quarterbacks that have gone, and Mahomes and Rodgers that are ahead of him are the only ones that have won a Super Bowl. The other guys, again, like you said, I didn't realize that, except for Cousins, who's at 9, and Dak are all underachievers. It's funny, too. They're all in the NFC. All the NFC quarterbacks are all underachievers when you look at the guys that are high on that list. Dak was a 4th or 5th rounder. Cousins was a 4th or 5th rounder. And Jalen was a 2nd rounder. The AFC has all the guys that are in the top, that were all top draft choices there. I got to ask you something, Seth. And I want to, have a conversation here, because I think you're the only one that, outside of me, really, that could have this. Are you concerned about Jalen Carter? And I want to throw this at you. Someone asked me the other day, was Jerome lazy? I was like, I wouldn't say lazy, but what I would say is he would take plays off, and we had to remind him at times. And all of a sudden he would be reminded, and he'd make those flash plays, and you're like, shit. So you put up with a little bit of that. And I thought when he got around you guys, you and Reggie, he became a better practice player than he was with us, because he saw how you guys prepared each and every single week. Not that we didn't, because we had a bunch of great people at UM. You know this. And so I tried telling people, are you concerned about Jalen Carter? And I'm like, hey, Jerome used to go in that parking lot at the vet on that motorcycle and Jeff Fisher and all them guys, they used to call me, and he's going to 160 miles an hour, and everyone was worried about him, and everyone was concerned about him. Do you see that, and do you think the environment in that building is enough so that this guy can fulfill his prophecy? I want to be very respectful to my friend here.
I think that
and do you agree with what I said?
Oh no! Listen, every player in the NFL has to grow up. Okay, you asked me the question: was Jerome lazy? Yeah, he was lazy. There were times where he was lazy. There were times where him and I had heart-to-heart conversations. I'm like, you don't know how great you could be if you just spend an off season working out. I said, I will come to Brooksville, or you can come to El Paso, Texas, and work out with me. I will go through it with you. I said, but if you get yourself in tip-top shape, as great as you are right now, they're not going to be able to touch you. Unfortunately, he had just got to a point where, it wasn't going in one ear and out the other. It was
he
going
saw the
in
light.
Yeah. It was that off season. We were having conversations. That off season, Otho Davis actually sent me, a video of him biking and training, and unfortunately, on June 25th, we lost him. But when you talk about Jalen Carter has to go through that same growth spurt, from a psychological and a mental standpoint. It's hard for, I talked about talent, talent can either be a blessing or it can be a curse. For the guy who relies only on his talent, it's a curse. Because when you get to this level, when you get to the level of the best, talent is not enough. Talent can get you there, but your hard work will keep you there. And it's hard for people who are supremely talented to realize that they need to work hard because they're just better than everybody else naturally. It was different for me because, I wasn't, this great talent. So I knew I had to work my ass off to get to where I wanted to get to. So it was different for me. I spent, I was in the classroom watching film to 7, 8 o'clock at night during the week when everybody else was out of the building by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I did extra, work on the field when I felt like I needed it. I even got home at night after dinner and would study till 10:30, 11, 12 o'clock at night, because I knew I needed the upper hand because I just couldn't beat everybody that I lined up against, because I was supremely more talented than they were. So for the person who realizes that hard work is necessary, talent's a blessing because you just got to put in the work. For the person who doesn't get that, it's tough. You would hope for Jalen Carter that what he went through a couple of days after the national championship was, a life-changing experience for him. Because I would submit to you or surmise to you that the reason why his pro day was so crappy is because of all the things that he had to go through leading up to it. Football is probably the last thing on his mind. You get subpoenaed, so you miss a day of the combine. And then you got all of this stuff that's swirling around you and everyone's talking about you and everyone's talking about, what you don't deserve, and then you got to go out, and perform for the scouts again. So hopefully the impact of that, I think what people forget is that his friend died, that a colleague died, and he had to deal with the reality of that. It wasn't his fault that they died. It was his fault that they were doing what they were doing. And it was just as much theirs, God rest their souls, as it was his. How many of us have done dumb things, stupid things, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And just by God's grace and mercy, I'm sitting here talking to you right now, Dan, or you're sitting here talking to me.
Me and Jerome used to race out front of the Miami. Hey, and someone asked me this, Seth. They go, did you and Jerome ever race out front of Miami? I go, yeah, he'd be in his Grand National. I would be in a Corvette. We would race. The cops would come. And just by the grace of God of what you're saying, nothing fortunately happened. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, someone would go like this. A cop came over or said something. And if I was Jalen Carter, I would lie too. Because you're in a position where you know that you're doing something stupid, and it comes and you start to realize that you could be looked at in a different light. Anybody in their right mind who's going to be the 9th pick in the draft, like Jerome was, is going to lie. My problem with the whole thing would be his decision making. As long as he doesn't do the same shit over, Seth, and put himself in that position, to me, like you said, we all make dumb mistakes. But what I don't want is a reckless dude on my team. That's something I can't have, because that means I can't count on you. And if he learns from all this, and I think the environment's in the room. Tracy recruited him. Jordan Davis is there. He's got people he played with. They interviewed the defensive coordinator for the DC job that the Eagles did. So they've done all their due diligence. I personally think that the media guy who asked him that dumb question and said something like, hey, I don't really feel that you're really sorry, he's just got to watch himself, because the media in Philadelphia is going to set him up.
Yeah, can I address that?
They set him up, Seth.
When someone is in a position of knowing what's in your heart and what's in your mind, only then can they judge the level of contrition that you have. This whole contrition thing chaps my freaking ass, if you will, because you know what? You don't get to look at me and tell me what I feel. I don't care who you are. You don't get to look at me and say, oh, you don't look like you're all that sorry. Excuse me, but fuck you. How about that? Okay? Because you don't know the pain that I go through every night when I see two people that mean something to me die in front of my own eyes. Okay? The question almost makes it seem like, because he's the one that lived and the other two died, it's his fault that they died. I just don't, the contrition thing really, really bothers me. Okay? Who died and made you God? Who put you in a position that you can judge someone and say, oh, well, you look like you're contrite, or you contrite enough. You said you're sorry enough. Go to hell. Okay? Go to hell. Because you don't know what I deal with on a daily basis. You don't know the nightmares that I have on a daily basis. Okay? You're just trying to write a story. You're just trying to put a narrative out there. Okay? Now, I don't know Jalen Carter, but if I had an opportunity to talk to him, Dan, you know what my spiel to him would be? Is that, listen, by God's mercy, you got a second chance where your friends didn't. Okay? You're in a unique position. Okay? You've worked your entire life for this. And there are these things out there that can snatch it away from you as fast as that night, that race snatched those two lives away from you. Okay? So you got a choice to make. You can either learn from that, or you can learn the hard way. My mom used to always tell me, son, a hard head makes for a soft ass. And there's two ways to do things. Okay? You can either do it the right way, or you can do it again. Okay? So you got your second chance. You're not going to get a third chance if you do something stupid. Okay? All the naysayers, all the haters, all the doubters, they're waiting for you to confirm what they think about you. But only you know who you are. And only you know what your dreams are. And only you control the narrative of what your future is going to look like. Okay? You work too hard to get to where you are. Don't let nothing, no one, no circumstance snatch your dream from you. You know, you just can't do it. I mean, it reminds me of, you know, these guys back in the day, you know, who would go to the combine and smoke and test positive for smoking weed. You know they're going to test you, okay? You've been working your entire life for this. You mean to tell me that getting high is so important that you got to do it and then go and test positive knowing that people are going to move you off their draft board, you dummy? You know, I'm not letting anything or anyone deter me from my goal. My goal was to get to the NFL. I wasn't going to have any associations. I wasn't going to be mixed up in drugs in any way, stealing, none of that stuff. Because I already knew that I was fighting an uphill battle. I wasn't going to throw anything else on top of it to make that journey even that much more difficult. You know, this is the reality that people need to like hit these guys, you know, that have these troubled pasts. They need to hit them between the eyes. What else are you going to do in your lifetime that's going to allow you to change the dynamic of your family economically and for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish than what you're doing right now? So nothing's more important than that, okay? No party, no car, no woman, none of this. None of that stuff is more important than what your dreams are. So you put all of that stuff on the back burner, and everyone in your life has to understand that this is first and everything else is second.
Absolutely. Couple last questions for you, Seth. I know you got to roll. Brian Baldinger said something a couple weeks ago to me on the program, and I want to get your spin on this. You know, it's funny that Jordan Davis came into the Eagles out of shape, and it's also funny that Jalen Carter was out of shape for the combines and for his pro day. And this is what Baldy said. He was like, you know, that's a funny program. These guys do so much rotating and so much in and out and they get such big leads. And because you got a deal now, Seth, with Nil and with the transfer portal at Georgia, guys are in and out. You got a promise nowadays, not like when you and I played, you're going to play all 70 plays. No one's coming in for your ass. The programs today, those big ones like Bama and Georgia, you got to rotate a shitload of guys. And his opinion is this: those guys aren't NFL conditioned when they come into the NFL because they don't play game reps. They don't play 70 plays. That's why you don't see a lot of production. Like Jordan Davis had 9 sacks in 43 games at Georgia. And I'm like, man, that's not a lot of production. I look at Carter's stats. I see the skill, great hands, great feet, controls the middle, does all the things. Then I watch him, I go, this is not a character thing. This is more, is it an indictment on the program that, you know, they have so many great players there, Seth, and that rotating, these Georgia guys, man, maybe they're just not in shape when they come into the game. Can Baldy be onto something here with that? They're just not in game. They don't do enough game reps.
I don't know that I agree with that 100% because, you know, what you see on the college level is now what you're witnessing on the pro level. Like, when I played, I wasn't giving up any of my reps. Don't send somebody in because I look like I'm tired, okay? Don't send somebody in because, you know, you got a monitor on me that tells you that, you know, my oxygen levels are, you know, a little lower than where they need to be. No, I'm the starting linebacker, and I'm going to start and play every damn play. I'm not giving any of my reps to anybody else. The dynamics are different now, okay? They're trying to make sure they can keep people fresh, for one. Secondly, you know, they've got these players, you know, on a percentage or a pitch count. They analytically, they feel like when players get to a certain amount of plays, that the risk of injuries go up exponentially. Like the Eagles. The Eagles you'll never, very, very rarely, maybe once a year, once every 2 years, will you see a running back supersede more than 18 carries in a game. Because I honestly believe that the Eagles, you know, sports medicine people and sports science people believe that the minute that a running back gets above 18 carries, the probability of injury goes up exponentially, okay? So it's no different in Georgia. They're doing the same thing. They just got so much talent that they can get away with it a lot more than a lot of other programs can. Now, do these guys, need to get in shape for the pro level? Absolutely. None of us came into the pro game in shape for the pro game.
We all felt it, right, Seth? If you played college ball and a lot of it, like week 12, 13, 14, you were like, because we not played past 11 games and 12 games back then. I was like this in week 13 or 14. Holy shit, man. There's 4 more of these things.
Well, hey, listen, for me, it was just, we conditioned too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like,
3 a days, 2 a days.
It wasn't like you didn't, you weren't prepared. That's why, in the buddy, we always got off to a 2-4 record, a 1-3 record, because, we just he beat the hell out of us, in training camp, and we conditioned almost every day after training camp. But by the time we got past week 4 or 5 and we, caught our second win, now we were in shape and, you could play a complete game and not have to worry about it. There's a distinct difference between, the level of conditioning that you have to have as a professional player and the level of conditioning that you have to have as a collegiate player. It's just factual. The game is faster, the game is more powerful, the game is more violent. All of those things, come into it. And now with these wide open offenses, you're playing more plays. Back in my day, if you played like 65 plays, that was a lot of plays.
A lot of plays.
Now, under 70, that's an anomaly. They're like 70 and above. So, you think about these long drives. You get a guy, and as smart as coordinators are, they say, okay, we got him on the field. We're not even going to change personnel. We're going to go hurry up so we can keep those guys that are in the game that are like got their hands on their knees and, can't even, their tongue is stuck to the roof of their mouth. We're going to keep them right down the field and wear them down even more, And a lot of times they force the defense to call the timeout just so they can rotate and get some new guys in and get those guys some oxygen. But it's like I always say, if you don't work hard and you don't practice hard, it's hard to play hard. Buddy pushed us. And he pushed us because he wanted practice. He wanted game to feel like practice and practice to feel like game. So he pushed. Maybe it was a little bit of overkill. I don't know. But I don't think that, the way that college teams manage their players and the way that pro teams manage their players is that much different. I just think that, these guys need to, by their second year, they need to adapt and get their pro body. Like Jordan Davis, in my opinion, Jordan Davis needs to be about 325 pounds, okay? He needs to be much more muscular than he is, from his neck down to his waistline, and
still got that baby fat, Seth?
Yeah, listen, you're playing against grown men. You're not playing against, kids anymore. So, it took me about 1.5 2 years for me to get my pro body. And I thought that I was like there, but the difference was, I was bulky, but I was too big. I came in at 255, running the 4.55 40, Buddy looked at me after, my rookie season. I started the last, 7 8 games of the year. And he was like, when you come in next year, I need you around, 242 to 245, no more than 245. People don't understand, that's a lot, to lose 10 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
When you're mostly muscle anyway, but once I did that, it changed the complete dynamic of how I played the game, my conditioning for the game, and everything else. So to me, what's more important is I want to see these guys get their pro body. I'm not worrying about conditioning, because they'll get there. They're only going to play 65% of the plays max anyway. None of these players are going to play more than 65% of the plays. Like Fletcher Cox, Fletcher only plays like 55% of the plays, So conditioning is not necessarily, an issue in my book because there's very few positions. The one starting linebacker that's in on every play, the corners, the quarterback, the offensive line, those guys are going to play every damn play. They ain't getting a break. Everybody else, they're going to get a blow.
Finally, last question for you here. Couple things. One of my guys over at the NovaCare Center told me something about Matt Patricia, and I want to ask you the style of defense that this team should play. I'm not sure they know, but let me throw this at you. Patricia's brought in because they're playing the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Jets, and the Bills. Obviously, he's brought in as a hitman. He schemed against those teams for 17 years up in New England with Belichick. So it kind of makes sense as a mercenary coach, kind of in a way. Plus, he's pretty good at disguising. But the Cy here, a Fangio guy, Seth, they don't have linebackers. There's 4 linebackers on the roster right now. One of them we're not sure about, Nakobe Dean. And the rest of them, I mean, the one guy had 100 tackles in Chicago. They took TJ Edwards. They wanted to upgrade, and we took their downgrade. I don't know. I mean, what do you think is the best scheme for this team? Because I think their corners, they're right up the middle too, Seth. Look, I mean, you don't know what you got at the safety position. Your linebacking core is weak. You can't put Nakobe out. You can't put Nakobe inside on guards in a 34. Guys like Landon Dickerson will run him into the turf. You put him out wide. Do you put Nolan Smith out wide? Use some of that 4-3. Put the pieces on the chessboard for me here if you can, because it just seems that figuring out this Rubik's Cube is going to be quite the task this year.
Well, I think, it's going to be interesting to see what it is that Sean decides to do. I think that the Eagles have got some major – I don't know that, you hire a guy because you're playing that division that he lived in, all of those years. To me, it's got to be a lot more there that he brings to the table than what he can tell you about the Bills, the Jets, and the Patriots. That's just my opinion. I'm more concerned and more interested to see, was Sean Desai selling us, wolf tickets? Was he telling us what we wanted to hear about the fan base in the city of Philadelphia, that, the team should embody, the attitude and, what the city is like? Because Philly is rough, tough, grungy, blue collar.
You ain't buying it.
Well, I mean, that's not the type of defense that we've seen the last 2 years.
Correct.
So is there an adjustment? Is there a switch, that we're going to see? Vic Fangio, I will say this: Vic Fangio is not necessarily, a passive guy. He didn't run his defenses the way that Jonathan Gannon ran his defenses. Jonathan did not have the ability to disguise coverages, so they were pretty static, and that's easy for the elite quarterbacks of the NFL.
You think they became too predictable?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, when you line up and where you line up is where you finish up. You can't play in the National Football League like that. You can get away with that in college sometimes. And there may be some lower level quarterbacks in the National Football League that you can get away with that with. But for the most part, the elite level quarterbacks, they're going to get a pre-snap read and you're beat before they even ask for the football, So they got to disguise some of the things that they do. I just still believe they need to be more aggressive. They're not going to have 70 sacks like they had last year. Those things are anomalies, just like Nick Foles had 27 touchdowns and, 2 interceptions way back. Those things are anomalies. You're not going to do that year after year. Now, they're going to be a good pass rushing football team. They should be. But 70 sacks, come on.
No.
I don't see that happening again. But so they're going to have to be a little more aggressive.
When you say that, Seth, corners aggressive, linebacker blitzes, stunts on the perimeter, 5s and 7s, techniques, are you talking twists and stuff like that? Or are you talking multiple ways of being able to disguise blitzes and pressure? Is that what you're talking?
I think all of it, Dan, because you know what? you want to make offensive coordinators have to prepare for a plethora of stuff. Like if you're an offensive coordinator preparing for Jonathan Gannon, you didn't lose much sleep during the week. You know, you just didn't, because you knew what you were going to get. Coverage wise, you know, you're probably going to get
Cover
one or two blitzes a game. That's it. Okay. So that's easy. But I think it's just a combination of all of it. You know, what really excites me is, you know, about this defense is what you can do. And I agree. Let me stop for a second and I'll go forward. I agree. You know, the overlooking of the linebacker position to me, you know, is a massive mistake, because all teams are 4-2 front. And because you don't have four linebackers or three linebackers on the field, you better make sure that at least one of those guys that's playing linebacker in that 4-2 scheme is a downright, you know, hellraiser. If you look at all the good defenses in the National Football League now, they all have at least one linebacker that's a playmaker, not a tackling machine, a playmaker and a tackling machine. Okay. So that's a deficiency that, you know, they either going to have to address through competition, and somebody's going to step up and take the bull by the horns, be it Nakobe Dean or whoever it is. You figure out a way to protect him if, you know, if he can't get off blocks and things of that nature, or you find it through competition throughout training camp, or that guy maybe not even in the building right now. You just never know. But when I look at the pieces that they have, what excites me is the diversity that you can have within, you know, your defense. When you go to your 5-man front, like when the Eagles went to their 5-man front last year, you knew that anytime that they wanted to rush 4 and drop one out of that look, that it was going to be Hassan Reddick. Okay. Now you got a guy who's probably going to be a rotational player in Nolan Smith, that he can be that guy. Okay. Now think about it. Think about this NASCAR package. You got Hassan Reddick on one side, Nolan Smith on the other side. You kick BG down to tackle. You got Fletcher Cox, and you got Jalen Carter. Okay. And now you got games that you can run out of that look. Okay. You got
two missiles. You got two missiles on the perimeter that you can really utilize. I've been saying that the whole time, Seth, that I'd put the kid Smith because of the 4-3, and he's potentially a better tackler, and he's a better cover guy, more like a Parsons guy on the wide side of the field. And I would rush Reddick off the weak side and rush him that way, because he's a one-dimensional guy, Seth. He's not the greatest tackler. He's more of just get up there, go around the hula hoop.
Yeah, but you got so many different things you can do, Dan. Okay, let's say, so the Eagles last year, they couldn't stop anybody in their 4-man front, so they had to pretty much live in a 5-man front. Even in passing situations, if you want to go a 5-man front, you know, look at the options that you have. Okay, you can drop both guys and bring 2 backers or a backer and a safety. Take your 5s, blow them out for contain, send 2 guys up the middle, take your nose, Jalen Carter, and just run the center straight back. Okay, that's one look. Then you got all the games that you can play on one side or the other. Okay, you can crash Nolan Smith or Hassan Reddick and scrape the backer off the end. I mean, there are so many. I mean, when they picked him, I got a pen and a paper and I sat down and I just started drawing up five-man games and the things that they can do.
You think they got more athletic, Seth?
Oh, of course they did, man. Of course, because there's more diversity with Nolan Smith. Now, he's not a guy you can play every play. You know, Josh Sweat is still going to play. He's still going to be the starter.
Graham.
And then you got BG, you know, who's probably going to get, you know, his 35 to 40% of the plays. But the things that you can do in situational football with those guys on the field, it's just, you know, even in first and second down situations, you know, just your run blitzes. You know, if you get a team that really wants to test you, your run blitzes and your run fits are just phenomenal in a true 7-man front with the guys that you have and the different things that you can do. So there should be a lot more movement, you know, on this defensive line. ETs, TEs, line up 3 guys on one side, Hassan Reddick by himself on the other side, and you got all these loops and all these stunts. You walk the Mike Backer down in the A gap, you know, to the side that Hassan Reddick is on by himself to make sure that you pull, you know, that blocker, because you got to go three to the three offset. One guy's got to concentrate, who is the center or the guard's got to concentrate, you know, on that linebacker who's sugaring that A gap. Now you got Hassan Reddick over here one-on-one. Same thing, you know, that the Rams did, you know, with Von Miller in the Super Bowl. You know, they were just in a position where they could dictate,
and the Broncos,
you know, to a weak offensive line how they were going to attack them. You know, and now you just play your games. You know, you may drop Hassan Reddick out and loop a linebacker around. You got games where you can like take that guy on the 3 side and loop him all the way back around. You take the 2 and send him out and loop him all the way back around up the center. And you got the linebacker coming too. I mean, it's a creative defensive coordinator's dream to have the type of players that Sean Desai is going to have at his disposal, because you can just sit back and draw whatever it is that you want to draw up, because you got one of the best secondaries in the National Football League. You got one of the top slot corners and maybe, you know, one of the best cornerback tandems in the world. You just got to put those guys in position where they're up, where they're challenging guys at the line of scrimmage instead of playing 7 yards off and you doing all of this stuff and getting all this pressure, and they're just stemming them and running slant routes that they can't defend. Get them up and challenge them. You know, he says that we want teams to feel us. That tells me that they're going to be a much more aggressive defense this year. And I'm going to be waiting with bated breath, and I'm going to be watching to see how this defense transform beyond what they were last year and what they are this year.
Tell you what, Seth, what an observation, because I'm friends with Raheem Morris, and what they did with Von in Los Angeles is exactly what they did in Denver with him. And it was exactly to the T. He goes, hey, look, well, why wouldn't I use his skill set on what he did in Denver here and being able to put him in a position to be successful? So I'm with you. Seth, I know you got to roll, man. I mean, I could talk to you forever. I put you on my top 10 greatest Eagles of all time. And I said this about you. I think in the Super Bowl era, maybe Bergie is in that conversation. I think Bill's best years were in Cincinnati, though. I would say this about you, Seth, that you were the Eagles' most complete linebacker. And you were kind of a version like, you tell me if this comparison is fair. I think you're like a Ryan Shazier and a Derek Brooks. And what Brooks could do, he could cover, he could blitz, he can hit. You're a better hitter than him. And I would say a better tackler than him. And he was used more in a Tampa 2, kind of what you're saying these linebackers in our scheme need to be, kind of that Ryan Shazier type of guy. Is that a fair assessment? I kind of like Brooks and Ryan. I think Ryan Shazier was a really great linebacker. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest losses that Tomlin has had is that not having that guy in the middle of his defense, because he could cover Gronk and he can hit. And so I thought you were kind of in that kind of conversation there.
I think the loss of Ryan Shazier destroyed their Super Bowl chances.
Absolutely. I think he was a bigger loss than Le'Veon Bell mm-hmm. and even AB, because he was the Gronk killer. He gets on that scene, and when they lost him, the Steelers were never the same, and they've never been the same. Finding a guy like you, Seth, and Derek Brooks in today's NFL, dude, you don't have these multiple guys that could – see, like for you, if you thought you had a cover guy, you could probably take a deeper drop. But because of your speed and you're not having a false step, you're going to slam into that hole, man. I just don't think people realize the technique that you had and what it takes. One false step in the NFL, you're chasing. I mean, in college, you get away with that. In the pros, one false step, dude, you're on. You're traveling Tuesdays to look for a gig.
You know what it is? It's what you're asked to do and how you're developed. You know, in my opinion, it's those two things, and not necessarily in that order. A lot of it is how you develop. Like when I first was drafted by the Eagles, I had good feet because I was a basketball-aholic, played a lot of basketball. You know, I played in a defensive scheme, where I was on tight ends, so I could deal with tight ends. But I also played off the ball, so I had that versatility to be able to play off or on the football.
Did Buddy draft you?
Yeah. But when Buddy drafted me, they were trying to figure out where I played, where to play me, because in college.
Did they look at you like Kevin Green? Like you didn't know
No.
where to put Kevin Green?
No,
he was like a tweener guy.
So I tell you what they were trying to do is they were trying to figure out where I fit, because the problem was my freshman year in college, I played inside backer. My sophomore year, I played outside backer. My junior year, when we played against passing teams, I played outside. When we played against running teams, I played inside. In my senior year, they put me strictly at inside. So the NFL teams were trying to figure out, well, where the hell does he play? Well, when I got to Philly, Buddy didn't care where you played. From a development standpoint, you did everything. So we would go down with the corners and cover the wide receivers one-on-one. I can remember lining up against Mike Quick, trying to cover Mike Quick one-on-one. Now, wasn't very successful at it, but if I could get close to being able to cover him, then I would eat a tight end or a running back out of the backfield completely up. But we went down and we worked, every single day. Then we had blitz pickup and coverage on running backs and tight ends, so you learn how to blitz and you learn how to cover. Then you had, the 9-on-7 period where it's just runs, and you're reading blocking schemes and you learn blocking schemes and you learn with a 3 technique and a 2 technique and a 1 technique and a 5 technique. You learn all of those things, from a linebacker standpoint, and you get to stand behind it all and be like, okay, well, if he's in a 3 technique, he's responsible for the B gap on anything to me, okay? Anything away, he's going to squeeze him. I got to get front side A gap to full flow. So you learn, but you're developed during this entire time. You're being developed every single day. You're learning something new and you're being taught a craft every single day. If I'm taking on a lead block, or if I'm taking on, an if block, what we used to call it, where the guard takes a step out, or tackle takes one step out and comes at you, and you're responsible for that outside gap. Well, I'm going to take it on with my inside shoulder. I'm going to keep my outside arm free. I'm turning everything back into Byron, So over time, you learn all of those things. You learn where you fit. And because I was a studyaholic, I could tell you what the defensive lineman's job was. Like on flow away and flow 2, I knew where they were supposed to be, and I knew where my fit was. I knew where Byron's fit was. I knew where that off gap on the weak side, that cutback where the home run is, I knew that free safety, if he didn't get down and fill that gap, then we had a problem, And when I played in unders on that weak side, there were times where I could play games because that's the home run. Emmett used to always go front side, but he would always be looking backside because he wanted the home run out the back door. And that guard was always trying to cut me off. Well, there were times where I would make it look like I'm running way across, and then I would rock back and hit Emmett in the mouth. and there were times where, I would make it look like I'm hanging backside, and I'd make Emmett hit it front side, and I'd either backdoor behind the guard, or I just take him and put him in the gap, So there's this process of learning, that I think is missing in the National Football League today, as from a developmental standpoint, and then what are coaches asking players to do? Okay. Teams, offenses dictate to defenses personnel groupings by who they put in the game. Back in our day, we could beat the stew out of you. So we could dictate personnel. You want to go 4 wides? Well, we're going to blitz off the corner. We're going to take the 2 extra steps. We're going to hit your quarterback every single time. He's going to get so tired of getting beat that by halftime, he's going to be like, Coach, we need to bring a tight end in, on one side. So now we're dictating, formation and personnel based upon our ability to put pressure on you. and beat you up. That doesn't happen anymore. Now they go 4 wides. They either go dime package or big dime. No linebackers in the game, you know. So now they're dictating to you what personnel you're putting in the game. You know, I never came out of the game, ever. If we were in nickel, dime, every sub package we had, Dan, I was in the game, you know, because over the years, the coaching staff developed me in a way where if there was only one running back on the field, guess who had him? I knew I had him. You know, if you want to go 4 wides and a tight end, go ahead. I'll get over here on the tight end. Well, it's all good. There was times where I had to cover wide receivers. I remember for the first time we played cover 7, man coverage against the Washington Redskins back in the day, as they were formerly known. You know, I was on the weak side, and they went, you know, 3 wides. We had man coverage on. Well, the 3 linebackers are responsible for the tight end and the 2 backs. Well, they only got 1 back. So guess who's got to get out there on that slot guy? Right here, you know, I come to the sideline. I'm like, Coach, you know, they had 3 wide receivers in the game. We were in cover 7. Get your ass out there and jam him and run with it.
Man, you were just born just a tad bit too young, because hey, if they're paying Roquan Smith $25 million, dude, I don't know how. Let me see. Jerome would have got 25. You give Devon Hargrave 20, he gets 25. Reggie's getting 50. You're getting 20. Shit, Waters is out of the game because he's going to be a Burfict candidate. Hopkins, they're going to question his ass, but he's going to make money. Eric Allen is going to make $25 million. Bro, man, that defense alone is $200 million.
But I'll tell you this, you know, knowing what I know about the game that we played and the game that these guys play today, just from a pure football standpoint, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't want to play. The only reason I would want to play in today's game is because of the money.
Money.
You know,
right.
Other than that, you know, because I'm telling you right now, if you take my statistics, take my career statistics, you can take a linebacker now. If he played 15 years, he'll never, ever, ever come close to the kind of numbers that I put up over my 13 years.
I'm working on this, Seth, and
Dan, it won't happen. It's an impossibility.
No. I'll tell you why. Jared Bell, Jason Cole, the guy in Dallas. I got 7 others, and I went like this. I go, so you put Ken Riley in after 20 some odd years. They're saying, Seth, that you're going to have to possibly wait until the Veterans Committee to get in, because then they have a better sense of the control, because Ken wasn't an all-decade guy too. And I was talking to those guys about it. I go, listen, this guy's a fixture. He goes, he didn't win a championship. I go, I get it. And that's what the process is as well, because I said this, I go, so you put that guy from the Miami Dolphins in, and you think that guy's a better football player than Seth Joyner? I go, I don't. I saw him on film. I watched the VCRs. I go, the kid in Miami has a lot of political people behind him to get him in and pushed him in. Plus Jimmy helped him. You know, it won't happen, because until you get to the Veterans Committee, that's going to be your best chance. I put these lists together for all 50 Hall of Fame guys. And I put a list, and then they get it down to 15. Then they'll ask guys like me, about 15 other guys. And I go like this. Joe Thomas never had a winning season, played on some of the sorriest teams of all time. He's a Hall of Famer? Okay. I go like this. The kid, Leroy Butler, I go, so you think Leroy Butler's a better football player than Eric Allen? Man, I don't. Or do you think really that Eric Allen, Rondé Barber aren't the same guy? I go, I don't know. You know, so I have those debates. Seth, I got your back, man. I'm trying.
Let me tell you something, Dan. You know, when I fell in love with the game of football, I didn't fall in love for any accolades whatsoever. Okay. To be elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame will just be the icing on the cake for me, because as an 8th round draft pick, I wasn't supposed to play in the NFL at all, let alone, play 13 years, be a 3-time Pro Bowler, be a Sports Illustrated NFL Player of the Year, be a Super Bowl champion. I didn't get in it for that, so I would never allow those people who control via their opinion whether I deserve to be in or not. I don't give them the satisfaction of, being upset about it.
See, you're in the conversation like Harry Carson was in for the longest time. And Harry Carson used to get just so frustrated about it. And I go, Harry, I mean, you're a Hall of Fame player, whether it's this year, next year, what have you. Seth, again, man, I know here, Seth, I know what you are and who you are because I know who you were with. And I know these men that played. I knew Reggie well, and I know Jerome well. I knew Clyde. I mean, I'm all these guys who played with you go, that defense, the linchpin on our team was you, because you set them. You set the fronts. You got what the most underrated stat about you, Seth, is you got all your dudes' backs when they wanted to be stars. You let the front four be the stars on that team. When Reggie wanted to break, instead of maybe not setting the edge, you would cover the edge. Jerome running around a block, which he did a billion times, you would cover his ass on that. There's not a stat for that, Seth.
You want to know what means the world to me? So 1990, 1991. We had arguably the best defense in the National Football League.
One of the truly greats of all time.
Okay. You see this trophy right here?
Yes.
Philadelphia Eagles defensive MVP. Per my peers.
Put that up there. Put that up there so everyone can see it, please. Can you? Because I want to see that. That is.
So you can't read it because of the glare. I've got another one of these. It's in my mom's house. Okay. This is 1990. Seth. She has 1991. Okay.
Seth, you were the MVP on that defense.
My peers, the Jerome Browns, the Reggie Whites, the Clyde Simmons, the Mike Pitts, the Mike Golis, the Eric Allens, the Byron Evans. Those guys are the guys, okay, that elected me the MVP of that defense those 2 years. Okay.
That's the greatest.
That's trophy. There's nothing. I mean,
that's the greatest trophy I've ever seen.
Because those guys know. Those guys know. Man. Those guys know the work that I put in. They know the work that we put in. And if they saw me in that light on that defense that, that was number one across the board, okay? If those guys saw me as the MVP of that defense, okay? I hold that right here. That's more important to me than any other accolade that I could have. Is to be recognized by your peers, the guys that you go to war with every single Sunday. For them to look at you and say, hey.
What? 2-time MVP on Gangrene. Holy shit. Hey, Seth, hey, look, I got to take a time out on that one. I want to, Seth, man, that is one of the coolest things I have found out about you. A 2-time MVP on Gangrene, on Buddy Ryan's Gangrene, is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. Seth, thank you so much for doing this, brother. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, man.
You got it, my man. Take care.
You got it. Seth Joyner.
All right.
Wow. Please hit the like button. Randy Cross will join us next, the owner of 3 Super Bowls. Keep it here on the National Football Show.